The fall of the Roman Empire. That's one of those topics that has fascinated most of us in the West for centuries. And the reason for that is because it's a constant reminder that great civilizations can and do fall. Okay, and it's of a special interest now because at the moment the West is going through a bit of a rough patch. We're having an identity crisis. Sort of thinking for a lot of people is, okay, if we can figure out what happened to Rome, then we can learn from the past and hopefully prevent that from happening again. Okay, and apparently there's all sorts of a combination of complex reasons for why Rome collapsed. All right, so there's corruption, cultural and social decay, demographics, population decline. I've even heard global warming played a role in that. Imagine that. Okay, lots of complex reasons. But I've noticed a trend over the past decade especially that I've decided, okay, this is the absolute biggest threat to Western civilization right now. And it's something I've never even heard mentioned in reference to Rome and what happened there. And it's incompetence. The inability to do something right. Okay, and our level of incompetence now has just gotten to the point where it's borderline on just sheer stupidity. Okay, and keep in mind, I've never claimed to be particularly smart, so if it's gotten so bad, I'm just shaking my head at it. It's gotten bad. All right. A couple weeks ago, last week, there was a story about Microsoft, in their infinite wisdom, thought it would be a good idea for Chinese software engineers in China to support software for the Department of Defense. Okay, now think about that one for a minute. Why on earth might that not be a good idea to have Chinese software engineers in China supporting the United States Department of Defense software? Okay, apparently that's a question nobody at Microsoft ever thought to ask themselves. And then last week, 2 weeks ago, there was a guy, Chinese-born American citizen. I think he had dual citizenship. Okay, he worked for Raytheon, defense contractor, and he just got his company laptop and went to China with it. All right, so lots of drawings for missile systems and that type of stuff here. That's not good. And there's just been so much of that. I mean, we could just go on and on and on about stupid things like that, with China getting very sensitive information from us. All right, college, university professors being arrested for secret relationships with people from representing the CCP, I guess, and that type of stuff. A U.S. representative, House representative from California was literally sleeping with a Chinese spy, or alleged Chinese spy. Okay, well we have intelligence agencies and the FBI and things like that, government organizations, to protect our secret information, or to try to keep it secret. Okay, now, we're not at war with China, but we are rivals. Okay, so they're going to try to steal information from us. It's just to their advantage to do so. So they're going to try. And it's up to our military and intelligence agencies, FBI and contractors and so forth. It's up to them to be competent enough to make sure we don't just hand all of our sensitive information to China. All right, but they seem to be not doing the greatest job, and as near as I can tell, our intelligence agencies have become just absolutely incompetent. Epstein, that whole mess. Okay, now I don't know any more than any of you about that, which isn't much. Okay, but apparently there was some trafficking of minors there, and also children. And I'm saying that based on, okay, Elaine Maxwell's in prison for trafficking, so I'm assuming that happened. And then one of Trump's high-ranking officials recently said that there's a lot a lot, a lot of hours of video with children and bad things happening. I'm assuming that exists. Okay, so based on that, either our intelligence agencies knew what was going on there or they didn't. And either way, they're just incompetent. That's a no-win situation for them. If they knew what was going on and they didn't stop it, okay, if they're not going to protect children, then why do they even exist? There's nothing more important than that. Okay, and if they didn't know what was going on, this little island in U.S. waters that's constantly being visited by many of the world's richest and most powerful people, including ex-U.S. presidents, and they don't know what's going on there. Okay, that's incompetence also. It's not a good look either way. All right, but this isn't about me just saying bad things about U.S. intelligence agencies. That's not what this is at all. This is me pointing out those actually are our best and brightest, or among them. And if they're this incompetent, what's that say about the rest of us? Think hard on that one for a minute. Our leaders, okay, our corporate leaders, many of whom apparently were visiting that island. Okay, our political leaders, many of whom apparently were visiting that island. Bill Clinton, it seems, he was getting frequent flyer miles for going there, while Hillary apparently had her illegal private email server at her house with classified documents on it being hacked by pretty much everybody, and I'm guessing the Chinese also. Okay, these are our leaders. If our leaders are this incompetent, what does that say about us followers? Bernie Sanders. As far as I'm concerned, he is the poster child for incompetent. But he still accomplished a lot more than I ever have. And it hurts to say that. He's a how many times elected U.S. Senator? I mean, that's pretty impressive. I've never done that. And successful author. His book had made him a lot of money. So you can't say go after the millionaires now that he is one. Okay, I haven't done that. He's been far more successful than me, so can I really call him incompetent? And this is a bitter pill to swallow. If our leaders are this bad, what does that say about us followers? I mean, you want to talk about the truth hurting, this is it. There's an old saying, the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. And that is a powerful statement right there. A lot of truth in that one. Okay, well, that's where I'm at right now, just realizing, okay, if the best and brightest among us are this incompetent, well, what's that say about the rest of us? Okay, so how did we get here? Because it hadn't always been this way, but it is now. All right, so yeah, how did we get here? I think this relates to a story in the Old Testament. Okay, so the children of Israel, when they first went into the Promised Land, they didn't have a king. They had judges. And the judges were appointed by God. And the people had to trust in God. And the judges would go around a certain route every so often, a circuit, and they would settle disputes between people, and then they would organize people during times of war, participate in battles, all that type of stuff. But then the people eventually decided they wanted a king. They didn't want to depend on God anymore and the judges. They wanted a king to rule over them. And God warned them, if you get a king, you're going to get everything, all of the problems that come with having a king. Eventually, the king's going to own a very disproportionate share of everything. people say, no, we want a king. All right, so they got one, and all of the problems. Okay, well, that's something I've thought about. Why did they want a king? And it occurred to me, they didn't want responsibility. They wanted someone else to make all of the difficult decisions. They wanted someone else to fight the battles for them. They wanted someone else. They wanted a strong man to protect them. Okay, not to mention, when you're depending on God, all right, God's a tough judge himself. He has a high standard, and God judges us individually. Okay, that's trying to meet God's standards. And remember, there is no place to hide when it comes to God. Okay, so we know what our shortcomings are and our weaknesses and our faults. And it's a lot of work to overcome that. It's a lot of work to try to live up to his standards. Well, they didn't want that. They wanted to take the path of least resistance. They didn't want to be responsible. They wanted to be like kids and dependent upon other people rather than being independent and self-reliant. Okay, I see a lot of that now. A whole lot of that now. The problem is I'm seeing it in all of us, though. Every one of us, including our leaders. Okay? Being competent is not easy. It's taking on challenges and failing. And then getting up and trying again and again and again, and as many times as it takes to get it right. As painful as that is, that's how we become competent. Taking the path of least resistance is how we become incompetent. And that's what our leaders are doing. Okay, we had the globalist types, the WEF types. All right, they're constantly pushing these policies that don't hurt them, they hurt us and require regular citizens and working class. We're having to make sacrifices that they don't have to make so that they can get more money and power. Climate change. You need to cut back on your energy consumption, and you need this little bitty golf cart for a car while we fly around the world in our private jets. Burning more fuel in our one trip than you will ever use in your entire lifetime in your little car. Or unlimited illegal immigration. Yeah, we need more of that because, well, they're only going to compete with the peons down here. We don't have to compete with them as the rich people and the ruling class, and that's just more cheap labor for us. So we get, cheap gardeners and servants and so forth. Well, most of us can't see that. Most of us aren't going to think about it hard enough to realize that. We're just going to keep listening to the corporate media complex rather than doing a little investigating on thinking about things for ourselves. Path of least resistance. And we're all doing it, and we're all becoming incompetent as a result. So how do we fix this? How do we become competent again? Well, I think the answer to that one's pretty simple. We go back to God being our judge. That's a hard standard. I mean, it requires a lot of work to try to measure up to his standards and to walk in his path. But that's how we become competent. To be as the most competent we can be, the best we can be, we need the absolute highest standard to try to live up to. And that's his standards. Okay, I know I've carried on a lot in the past couple of years about personal responsibility and all of that stuff. But here's the thing. The more I talk about it, the more confident I get at talking about it. This is me becoming more confident. This is me not doing a good job talking about it, but getting up and trying again and again and again And hopefully I'm getting better. Okay. And hopefully this inspires some of you to think about this stuff. And the purpose for this, well, is hopefully get some of you to think about this, but I'm doing it for myself. I'm looking at what do I need to improve on. And it's a long list. There's a lot of stuff. And one of the things I thought about this week, I'm going to try to do a video on the 25 most influential historical figures in Western civilization. Okay, we're not talking about Western civilization anymore. Most people are. But I thought that would be a good one. What made me decide to do that is I was thinking, okay, what are the 25 most important books in Western civilization? Because I need to start reading more. Okay, things that generations of us in the West have read for a couple thousand years now. So Aristotle. I mean, how far back do you want to go with this? Obviously the Bible, but okay, we need to read more. We need to read those influential works. And then I got to thinking, okay, well, it'd be interesting to look at the most influential people and what books influenced them. And then I think that would give me a good idea as to where to start on what I think would be the 25 most important books to read. And hopefully that's a list, the list of books to read and people. Hopefully that's a list that would change over time because hopefully I continue to learn over time. Anyway, I thought that might be interesting. All right, God bless and have a great day.